Hey y'all, how's it going? It's Sway, and we have Mech and Quilboar joining the Battlegrounds tomorrow, Monday. And we've talked about Mech, so let's talk about Quilboar. So we've seen some minion types get some very large shifts in the way that they work, you know. I mean, not very large, but just kind of there's some focusing, and there are some very large shifts. Like Murloc, it was a very large shift. So overall, there's been just more of a focus and more of a streamline in some of these minion shakeups. This is a very specific situation going on for Quilboar. It reminds me a lot of Hero Power Druid right now in Constructed. We got a few new cards with Festival of Legends that I really like seeing the replication or just kind of the concept moving over here. It's a really fun one. So before we talk about those things, let's talk about what's leaving. On tier 2, our Roadboar is leaving. This is our 2/4 Frenzy minion. After it gets attacked and lives, you get a blood gem. On tier 3, the Bristlebach Brute is leaving. I'm sad about this because it was just some fantastic tempo. However, there are some pretty nice minions on tier 3 that I think will make up for that little gap that we're gonna have. On tier 4, our Ground Shaker is leaving. That's pretty huge. So the Ground Shaker was, there was multiple different ways to play Quilboar. As kind of the seasons progressed, Ground Shaker got slightly less relevant. And this is our tier 4 where you play a blood gem on it and the rest of your minions gain +2 attack. Of course, it always had its place. It's some really nice board tempo. You just like stay on 4, you have a Shaker, you have a duo. Like when Quilboar first came out, that was a really, really nice thing to do. And it just kind of didn't have much value moving forward. So I think that it leaving is good to make way for some new kind of concepts for Quilboar. On tier 5, we have Agamagon leaving. This was our beast that worked with Quilboar, where it gave blood gems a little more value, +1/+1, and you play multiple, they stack. But given some of the new minions, Agamagon pretty much irrelevant now. So definitely made sense for it to leave. Last but not least, on tier 6, we are losing our Dark Gaze Elder. This was a pretty interesting loss because as a certain amount of gold, you get blood gems played on some Quilboar on your board. We have a different tier 6 Quilboar coming in. That's not quite the same. It does play gems on other Quilboar, but we'll talk about that one. I have some mixed feelings about that one. I'm not sure how amazing or not amazing it's going to be. But before we get into that, we do have to talk about all of the ones before tier 6. That is one thing I very consistently do in these videos. I love getting ahead of myself. So on tier 3, that's where our first new minion lives. Tier 3 is our Moon Bacon Jazzer, which took me a second because we have our Sun Bacon Relaxer and now we have our Moon Bacon Jazzer. So I don't know what the sun and the moon have to do with bacon, but clearly something. Our Moon Bacon Jazzer is a tier 3 2/5 with a battle cry. For the rest of the game, your blood gems give an extra +1 health. So this is what I was talking about with the Druid kind of mirror here of like a battle cry giving +1 health. So every time you play a blood gem after you play a Moon Bacon Jazzer, you get that +1 health with that gem. Now moving on to our tier 4, Prickly Piper, which is a death rattle, 6/3. For the rest of the game, your blood gems give an extra +1 attack. So you play some Jazzers, you play some Pipers, and you're just getting some pretty large value from your gems. And I mean, I do like the battle cry aspect of the Jazzer. It's good that we have a battle cry and a death rattle. We've also seen a few different, methods of triggering battle cries, or we have our Macaw back for our death rattles. So these are things that could potentially just live on your board. You could have a Moon Bacon Jazzer next to a Rylak if beasts are in the game, or if Murloc are in the game next to a Murkai. The Prickly Piper, you can, like I said, proc with Macaw. So there are a few different options here of having this and keeping it on your board. Obviously, the Piper can stay because it is a death rattle, so you will only get that effect in combat. But the Jazzer, as a battle cry, we do see the value of keeping a battle cry. So that could potentially be very helpful. Also new on tier 5, we have our Bongo Bopper. At the end of your turn, get a blood gem and play 2 more on this. So this feels kind of similar to the Brute in the way that you're getting the value of you get a gem and then 2 more on that one. So should you want to Necrolite something, that would be a pretty good target because it's going to be playing blood gems on itself. And hopefully at this point, you've already gotten your Jazzer and your Piper. So theoretically, this 5/5 tier 5 Bongo Bopper can get really, really, really large just from the fact that you have these Jazzers and these Pipers. Even though it's only 2 blood gems getting played on this, hopefully they have a lot of health and a lot of attack. And last but not least, here's our tier 6 that I was talking about. This is Bristlebach. I love it. I love the reference. This is Bristlebach, who has an Avenge effect. So this is a 2/10. Avenge 1, play a blood gem on all your Quilboar. So here are my thoughts on this, right? We do have a few Quilboar that we want to die during combat. Prickly Piper, we have our Thorn Collar, we have those Death Rattle effects. So of course, leading with those is nice, right? To get the value of Bristlebach. But I'm not sure how much the Avenge, I mean, it is only 1. So only 1 unit has to die to get that Avenge effect. So theoretically, you play a board of, you're playing a Quilboard. You're playing a Quilboar board. Oh my goodness. And each time a minion dies, you do get gems played on other things. And in that theoretical sense where you have the Jazzer and the Piper, and those gems potentially are really valuable. So every time something dies, that makes all of your other minions that much stronger. And we have seen, this is not something we've really seen. We've seen like the kind of concept of minions dying and that creating a stronger scenario as opposed to coming in loaded with large minions. So in that way, Bristlebach is a little bit of a support unit in that kind of concept. And it does say on all your Quilboar, so it doesn't say your other Quilboar. It will play a gem on itself. I just don't know how much Avenge value you're going to be getting, because I imagine, right, you maybe get 1 or 2 Avenge, and then at that point you got some pretty large piggies on your board, and they destroy your opponent's board. So Bristlebach, I'm interested to see how much Avenge we can actually get out of this. It does lend to like combo boards of having the first 3 or 4 minions be another minion type, one that requires a lot of summoning, and then the back of your board being a Quilboar situation, so you can get that Bristlebach situation going for you. Or, you know, we can do the reborn beast, let's say beast Quilboar, right? You can do like a reborn Rylak, you can do a Macaw, so that way you can get the Jazzer and the Piper, and you can do Bristlebach. And maybe like a Rivendare, maybe a Bran, that's a board, that's a whole board. That actually sounds kind of fun, and I will probably try that on day 1. But actually, this feels like maybe like I don't know if it's strong enough that when I go to 5, I'm gonna be like, yes, I tripled into a Bristlebach. You know what I mean? We'll have to see, but that's my initial read on it. However, I will say I'm very excited to try the Jazzer and the Piper. This concept in Druid was so exciting to me. So having this in Battlegrounds is going to be the most fun, and definitely a day 1 for me for sure, getting some value with that Jazzer and the Piper. On to the strengths and the weaknesses. So which minion types will Quilboar be good and bad against? So of course, that is the Avenge of it all. That's the kind of thing I had with Bristlebach here. But really, you're kind of building some large piggies. These are going to be large minions. You play these blood gems during buy phase, and then like you have the combat slight buffs with Bristlebach, but in general, you're just gonna have some pretty large minions, probably 1 or 2 small guys in the front, but aside from that, these are going to scale. These are going to be large. We are happy to still see the Bristlebach Knight, so that means we have our Divine Shield Wind Fury with the frenzy of getting that Divine Shield back, which makes it good into Venomous, good into Murloc. So in that way, I really like that. When we ran a very Divine Shield heavy mech situation with the mech roll, Bristlebach Knight was really great into that. So I'm tempted to believe that in general, Quilboar will be pretty decent into mech. But again, this is a minion type. If you watched my video yesterday, it's kind of not super explored in the way that I think that there's going to be so many different ways to run a mech board. So it's hard to say that Quilboar will be good into it. But just from the get-go, you know, anything with a shield and a Wind Fury. So like a Cyclone, a Bristleback Knight, I feel are generally strong against mech no matter what. But that is, of course, coming from the knowledge base of what mech used to be and what I think mech might be moving forward. So feels a little interesting there. Of course, we have our Puffer Quill. That's our Quilboar Naga. That's still in the game. So we have a Venomous in the Quilboar situation. So that's kind of fun as well. And Pufferquill did get a buff in the way that it moved down to tier 3 in this last patch. So that being said, we have a pretty decent tier 3, and like I potentially, depending on the game, might hard run a Pufferquill on my board. I was talking about this in my patch video, but like Pufferquill was never one you hard ran. So having the ability to maybe have a scaling unit that you keep on your board that, like, I mean, honestly, even with Bristlebach, you can have that be the blood gem that you play on the Pufferquill to get the Venomous for that turn. So doesn't necessarily need to start Venomous, but just like having that additional scaling. So that's something that may be a permanent piece for your Quilboar board. I want to say, given how Elemental look right now, it will be good into Elemental, but it is hard to say. I really like the idea of Charlie, or let me start that again because it's not Charlie. I really like the idea, give you a clean break. I really like the idea of Charlga with the Drakari Enchanter with the end of turn effect. We know during quest meta, the Ghastly Mask, you play Quilboar and your board scales insanely well. And then imagine how well your board would scale and just make very, very large minions with the Drakari, with the Charlga, like so quickly, so quickly, especially if those gems are giving +10/+10 or more, you know, like that is huge. That's massive. So yeah, you play 2 blood gems on all your other minions, but those blood gems are that valuable. That's insane. And I was looking at the fact that Agam is still in the game. So Agam means that there's still a line for a menagerie situation. I don't know about y'all, but I haven't been really feeling like, I feel like there's minion type combos. Like, you know, you have like beast and demon in some ways. And there are just certain things that fit together well between minion types, but having a full menagerie board's not much of a thing anymore because you don't really have those power standout pieces. There's a lot more synergy within minion types. So, of course, it's still possible, but the fact that Agam is in is potentially meaning that there is that opening, and maybe this will help create that opening even more so. I just realized I tangented so hard. We were talking about what minion types these are good and bad against, so let's go back to that idea. If we're getting really reductive here, we're looking at large minions versus summoning minions. Of course, these are the large minions. We don't have a single summoning situation in this whole thing aside from getting blood gems. So in that respect, you have these large minions that will do poorly against summoning minions because the summoning minions have multiple hits. You have 7 very large minions. They have 14 minions because other minions summon other minions, and that just keeps going, and all those minions are buffed and undead. So undead beast in general should probably do better into Quilboar than you'd like them to if you're playing your Quilboar board. But Quilboar, in the way that elementals have, like, they have shield, they have cleave, kind of with wildfire. So Quilboar have shield. They have this really large potential to gain a lot of stats really early in the game. So that puts them at that automatic advantage, I feel. And I feel like also a lot of these pieces are built to be very auxiliary. So there is this whole concept of board buffs that has been around, but more so now. You know, we've had Charlga in the game for a while. We also saw Fireworks buffing board. We have Boogie Monster now. The end of turn effect twice is now just a permanent part of the board with the neutral minion of the Drakari, so which works really well with the Quilboar, but you can run a Drakari and a Charlga and then no other Quilboar, or you could run a Drakari and a Charlga and Agam after you've already run your Jazzer and your Piper. So there's just a lot of opportunity to start with a Quilboar build and move into something entirely different. I think the most important thing to think about is the Jazzer and the Piper and just getting as much value from those units as possible. Of course, you can play a Quilboar. Of course, you can play a Blood Gem for +1/+1, but why would you do that when you can play it for +5/+5 or even +3/+3, you know? +1/+3. There are so many different ways that you can just benefit from having slightly larger blood gems, even if you're not playing Quilboar. So they're making this a very nice auxiliary minion type. If you can't get the Quilboar build, at least you still have the availability of the blood gems, which, you know, we'll see with Vol'jin. If Vol'jin's not banned, which I can't remember right now. I know Vol'jin's banned in Naga lobbies, but like Vol'jin already had a really nice situation of putting gems on something, swapping the stats, and then using a Necrolite to pull the gems off of that first unit, because they still exist there. They still live on that unit. So you just got all those extra stats, and I think that this is even more valuable now. Well, I guess we started talking about heroes. Let's talk about what heroes do well or badly with Quilboar. Due to the nature of what I was just talking about, of these minions just kind of being great auxiliary units, even if you're not building a Quilboar board, Millhouse is like a really great hero for this, because Millhouse is really reliant on your shops because the rolls are so expensive. So getting some gem buffs and then eventually using those gems on other things, if that's where the game leads you, is fantastic. Of course, there is some cycling ability for those econ heroes. So we can think about Hooktusk, we can think about Gallywix. Of course, summoning versus econ, summoning aren't going to do as well here because, I mean, what do these summon? Gems, but no minions. So those heroes are going to kind of be slightly remiss here. But of course, like with Terran, if you have Terran, you can use your hero power on the Prickly Piper, get that little extra death rattle in, but in general, you're not really looking at great value. So overall, that's my read on Quilboar. It's going to be a really fun and interesting scenario to have both Mech and Quilboar come in at the same time, because while they are kind of revamped, I mean, they're both getting like a little streamline. They're not drastically changing. I think Quilboar is getting a little bit more affected in the way that gems are, because gems affect the entire lobby, whether you're playing Quilboar or not. So that's going to be fun to see them both in play, and also how they affect all of the other minion types and how they affect the games. Of course, the power level with Mech and Quilboar is going to go way up. So seeing those combat what we are dealing with right now in the meta is going to be very fun. I'm very excited. So tomorrow we're going to have some fun gameplay of Mech or Quilboar. I'll be live at 1 o'clock on Twitch tomorrow if you'd like to come check that out. Thank you so much for watching this Minion Shakeup series. It was a blast to record. I love analyzing minions. I also really love talking. So I appreciate y'all hanging out, and we'll see you later for some gameplay tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.